What is up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Points live stream. This is not just any edition, though. This is our annual powwow. I am John Hansen from the aforementioned fantasypoints.com website. With me today are great contributors Greg Cosell, Adam Caplan, our guys Joe Dolan, and Graham Barfield, our man Benjamin Kukanis behind the glass. I went very formal there. We actually call him Ben. But if you're just tuning into the powwow here for the first time, this is actually year number 2 for the Fantasy Points powwow that we would normally do. It's a virtual powwow, if you will, that we would normally do actually in person. We all kind of lived in the same area for a good number of years. We get together right around this time after the draft. We go over all 32 teams. We get Greg Cosell's film study and his insight, Adam Caplan's information, and then me, Joe, Graham, others, Tom Brawley, Scott Barrett. We all chime in, obviously, with the fantasy football content. So that's what we're going to be doing this week and next. We're just going to take our time with it. We're going to go 2 divisions per day. So 2 divisions today. We're going to start off with the NFC East and NFC North. We'll reconvene tomorrow, wrap up the NFC, take a little break for the Memorial Day weekend, and then we'll be back next week to cover the AFC. So without any further ado, I do want to mention, if you're not a subscriber to fantasypoints.com, well, number one, you can get some insight here in terms of what we bring to the table, a little bit of a think tank, if you will. We all kind of approach things from a variety of angles. Adam with the information, Greg Cosell with the film study, and of course us, the fantasy guys. Almost said family guy there. But if you are not a subscriber yet to the website, the early bird special is over, but you can log on right now and get 10% off your 2021 subscription with the early bird code here, early bird miss 21, early bird miss 21 for 10% off. Now, without any further ado, let's say hello to everybody. Greg, you are back for another year. Are you ready for another NFL season? It's hard to believe.
Well, I am, because last year we weren't sure there would be an NFL season. So at least we have some certainty. And I have actually received some good news in the last week. So I'm pretty excited that the NFL Matchup Show was re-signed for 10 years. So
wow,
10 years.
Wow. Breaking news.
Well,
that is fantastic.
It was breaking last week.
I was not aware of it. Yeah. Very cool, man.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Congratulations there. How about you, Mr. C? Of course, you and I just did a radio show this morning on Sirius XM. So I'm actually a little sick of you. No, just kidding. How are you, sir, Mr.
I'm
C?
good. I'm well rested. I was on a little bit of a working vacation the past week. So I generally take it early because of, what it's like. I'm going to have a training camp tour this year based on what I've been hearing. So we're going to be back to relative normalcy in training camp, which we were hopeful for. That's good. We're having some sort of an off season, which is also good. We're all happy about that. And as Greg said, this time last year, we just didn't know what we were going to have. So things are better.
Yeah, things are better. Joe Dolan, you're down there becoming part of the culture down there in South Carolina. How are you, Joe?
How y'all doing? I've actually started saying y'all because it's very efficient and it sounds friendly. I actually just went to Atlanta, met some friends, our old friend Matt Brown, met them there the weekend, did some touristy stuff. The Georgia Aquarium has whale sharks. It's the only aquarium in the Western Hemisphere that has whale sharks, and they're huge. And, it was fun to go down there and actually get outside my house. People ask me how I'm doing in South Carolina, and I'm like, well, I like my house. We haven't really met people, but gonna go start playing golf with the neighbors. I'm all vaccinated up here, have been for a while, and I'm excited to get back to living life and anticipating having a real NFL season here.
Yeah, Joe, and at the end of the day, if you haven't learned already in this business, especially, summer and fall, we don't really go outside much. So, it doesn't really matter. I'm glad you like your house. I like mine as well, because again, I don't go outside. Graham, you are, you're all over the map here. You're moving regularly. You're really seeing America. You're settled in a new place here. You all settled in. How are you doing, Graham?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm down in Florida in the old stomping grounds at my wife's house. Long story, but we had to vacate our apartment in Denver. We just moved there a couple months ago. So we drove 8 states, 1,800 miles, something like that, 2 weeks ago to come down here and hang with fam for the next little bit while our apartment's getting fixed up. But yeah, it's good to be back with you guys, and just kind of, I wish we could be back in person, back at that old office or in your house, John. But
I
it's,
still love that. For this
oh, that was so much
it was
fun.
great.
That was so much fun.
And that lunch, John, we would get at that Italian restaurant right around the way.
Oh yeah.
I was just gonna say, Adam, you probably missed the lunch the most, right?
Yeah, I'll get it. Yes.
I liked hearing Graham.
We might as well then get started, John, because I don't want to miss lunch today. You know.
Right.
No, I'm glad to hear Graham mention his wife, though. I like that. We are doing the NFC East and the NFC North today, so let's kick it off with the Dallas Cowboys and some continuity here, guys. McCarthy back, obviously. Kellen Moore back, at least offensively. We are moving over to Dan Quinn, 3-4. Greg, I will start with you. Actually, there's not much really to get to. Pretty much all the starters back on the O-line. Dak, clean bill of health here in May, which is certainly, at this point, a good sign, a great sign. We know the 3 wideouts. But how about Simi Fehoko out of Stanford? I watched his tape a little bit. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Adam Thielen. I know he's a little raw and
Fehoko reminded you of Adam Thielen?
A little bit. I saw a little Adam Thielen, and I know he ran well, but I kind of viewed him as a little bit more of a larger, more of a possession type of receiver.
Kind of reminded me of Chase Claypool.
Okay. All right.
Wow.
But your thoughts on that kid?
He's a big man who can run. Now, I didn't love Chase Claypool coming out, and he obviously did better than I thought he would. But Fehoko is big. He's fast. He can get vertical. Thielen is not big. Fahoko's big.
Yeah.
So again, they have 3 starting wideouts. I don't know what it means for him. They also brought Cedric Wilson back, and he got meaningful snaps a year ago. So, barring an unbelievable offseason and training camp, I don't think Fehoko really is a huge factor in what they're going to do, John.
Right. I know. But for those in keeper dynasty leagues, I think it's possible that he emerges as the 4th receiver, if you will. That was Cedric Wilson, as you mentioned, Noah Brown and all that. How important, Greg, I'll stick with you. How important do you think it is for them to reestablish Zeke Elliott? I mean, we know he's great. We know the offense has gone through him, but I would argue that, the offense that we saw in September with Dak Prescott, not really the offense that they want. They don't want to throw it 50 darn times.
Well, I mean, I guess we don't know that, because as McCarthy's career in Green Bay evolved, he went from running the ball, because if you think back to when he was there early in his career in Green Bay, they ran the ball quite a bit. But as he advanced, they threw a lot. So I don't know. That's a great question. I mean, obviously, Elliott's going to be a factor. I don't know if anybody else has any other thoughts, but I don't know if right now with this quarterback, who's pretty good, assuming he's healthy, and these weapons, I don't know if this is a 340 carry season for Elliott, given what McCarthy might think and certainly what Kellen Moore might think. So there could be a little bit of a transition, John. I don't know what you have for Elliott in terms of projection, but my sense is they're transitioning a bit to throwing the football.
Well, that would certainly make sense, Adam. I'll go back to you. I mean, no doubt when you use you trade away a number 1 pick for Amari Cooper, you use that number 1 pick on CeeDee Lamb. I've got Zeke here with, kind of to your point, Greg, and keep in mind, we have an extra game, 280 carries. So I'm not going 315, like I used to. Adam, how important do you think it is this is a big year for Zeke, obviously. I guess they're all big at this point, but in terms of the overall health of this offense, how important do you think it is for Zeke to, quickly reestablish himself? Because that was never really done last year.
Yeah, and I think they'll go back to him more, obviously. I mean, you're not going to ask Dak Prescott was averaging over 40 attempts per game. That's just not going to happen, because they're going to a more traditional defense, a 43 front with Dan Quinn. Greg could get into what he thinks it'll look like, but we know it's going to be the Seattle defense, his version of it. But getting back to the offense, I do think it still will start with Elliott. But as Greg said, and I would agree, I don't think the volume of carries will be there like it had been before. Because when you go with the receivers that they have, Cooper is one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL, and he also is coming off a good year. Gallup could run; he's their D threat. Lamb is a first round pick, so those guys have to play. So they're no longer going to be a team that's going to line up in 12 personnel all the time. I think that they'll have the ability actually to become more of an 11 personnel team. That's something we don't know yet, but I would think because of those three receivers, John, that they'll start going with their philosophy is going to change a little bit. I do see that change.
And Greg, we'll go back to you. I mean, we certainly, it's worthwhile kind of revisiting Blake Jarwin, who does have pretty good chemistry with Dak Prescott, pretty athletic, might be a vertical straight line-ish kind of a guy, man, but some juice there, Greg. And certainly defensive coordinators are not going to be, all that bothered about Blake Jarwin. I think he'll get some nice one-on-one opportunities down that seam to make some big plays.
Yeah, assuming he's healthy, and even Dalton Schultz, when Jarwin got hurt, came in and did okay. So they've got a lot of weapons. Jarwin, my guess is and I don't think you probably have him projected this way, Johnny. He won't be a volume target, but he could be a factor as far as touchdowns. And I know for fantasy, obviously, that's very important.
Yeah,
but
the red zone guy.
Yeah, it could be. But it'll be very interesting. I'm fascinated. This is an offense that's going to be fascinating because I think Prescott, before he got hurt, I thought Dak Prescott he's improved every single year, and he's become a really good player. And assuming he's healthy, he's a good quarterback, and they've got a lot on the perimeter. And I agree with Adam. I mean, you're dealing with Cooper, Gallup, and Lamb. Those guys are going to be on the field. I mean, they did not expect CD Lamb to be there 2 years ago in the draft, and when he was there, they just gobbled him up. So he's going to play. He's going to play meaningful snaps. So this is going to be, in my view, percentage-wise, I mean, I can't give you an exact number. It won't be 90%, but I think this is going to be a 70+% 11 personnel offense.
What real quick have you noticed from Dak in terms of the improvement? Is he a little bit more fluid in his movement? Is he processing things a little bit better? Is he seeing things? Is he more decisive? What is it that you see about Dak Prescott in terms of his game being elevated as we move along?
Definitely the two things you said. He sees it and he's more decisive. And I think that's a function, too, of comfort within the offense with Kellen Moore staying. Every once in a while, Dak will miss one that with just his ball location is not as precise as it needs to be on some routine throws, some layups, as my buddy Kurt Warner would say. But for the most part, Dak is a very comfortable player. He understands this offense. He understands where to go with the ball. As Adam said, they've got pretty defined roles. I mean, Gallup is the X. He's the boundary player. They use him more as the vertical threat. Cooper is the movement guy. He's the Z. And Lamb is the slot guy. That's pretty much what they do. And Prescott's very, very comfortable with that.
Graham, the Cowboys ran off even without Dak for most of the year, like over 1,100 plays. What are your thoughts? And when we look at that for fantasy in terms of their play calling and their pace, the number of plays that they run off?
Yeah, like Adam said earlier, I don't think Dallas is going to come back and ask Dak to throw the ball 40, 45 times a game, especially coming off, the brutal injury he had. But yeah, for fantasy, we have to make note of just how much this offense changed last year. I mean, we only got 4 full games, 4.5 if you include the Giants game where he got hurt. But I mean, this team ran plays at the fastest pace, literally in NFL history. I mean, they ran a play every 20 seconds of game clock. And that was like 4 seconds faster than the next closest team. They were the most pass heavy team in the league when the game was within 8 points. So when the game was close, they were asking Dak to throw a ton. And I think this is just a different offense. I don't think Zeke is going to get the ball, 300 plus times like we've seen in the past. I do think that they'll dial it back a little bit with Dak, but for fantasy, I think Cooper, Gallup especially, and Lamb are all undervalued in drafts right now. I've been doing a bunch of best ball drafts to kind of get like a firm feel for the landscape, and I think all three are undervalued based on just the volume that all these guys could have. I love this offense once again. I thought Cowboys receivers were undervalued last year, and I feel the same way this year, especially with Dak looking like he's got a clean bill of health going into week 1.
A couple things I just want to add. One of the reasons why they're a high volume pass team is because they defensively, they were so bad.
Yeah.
For well over half the season. They started to play better at some point in the second half. There were some weeks teams were telling me they thought Dallas's tape was non-competitive defensively. The mental errors were so bad and embarrassing.
Yeah.
It was to the point where like you don't want people want to point the finger at Mike Nolan, which is obvious, which is easy to do, but the errors were so embarrassingly bad. And they cut Dontari Poe. They were so bad. And now you add Parsons in there and Kelvin Joseph. The hope is they'll be more competitive. They'll be more competitive because the talent level is better. But I don't know if there'll be a great defense because I just don't, particularly up front on their front four, they've got some questions.
Yeah, they don't.
Also, Adam,
still
it's a
don't have pass
new
rush.
coordinator too, and Dan Quinn. So there might be a little bit of transition there as well. Joe, let me go to you real quick. The three receivers that we've talked about here, the top three wideouts, each had 100+ targets. Last year, I was kind of in on the cheapest option, which was, I believe, actually CeeDee Lamb, but could be wrong there. I thought it was CeeDee Lamb, but this year, I think I'm in on, again, the cheapest option, which would be actually Gallup. I know he's volatile, boom or bust, but damn good player. Who do you like out of the three?
Well, I mean, I've always had kind of a blind spot to Amari Cooper, so I've been drafting him a little bit more. If I were to say, like, if I just want consistency, it's probably going to be Lamb. But Gallup, John, the separation last year, the three of those guys, I guess Cooper was a little bit separated from Gallup and Lamb, but Gallup and Lamb were going neck and neck. And now Gallup is like 4 or 5 rounds cheaper than CeeDee Lamb. And that raises a question, like, and maybe I'll pose this to Greg a little bit. If we were to look at Michael Gallup, let's just say you take Michael Gallup and you plop him on a hot air balloon and you drop him in Jacksonville. How would we view Michael Gallup? Like, what kind of player is he?
Well, I liked Gallup when he came out of college. I mean, obviously for fantasy, a receiver's targets and volume are dependent on how much they throw it and how, that's, and the Cowboys threw it a lot and they threw it reasonably well. I mean, obviously when Prescott went out, it changed, but the year before Gallup was good. Last year he was good, with Prescott. I think Gallup is a solid player. They clearly have made the decision, which is interesting because a lot of people might have thought it would be different, but they clearly have made the decision that he's their boundary X, not Cooper. So, the boundary X is a receiver that gets a lot of one-on-one matchups. And they obviously feel Gallup is that guy that can win one-on-one. He's a vertical receiver. And Prescott throws the ball vertically to him. So Gallup is a really good player. John, I guess for you, I don't know how you have this mapped out. I mean, Adam made the point that they don't want to throw 40+ times by choice. I think we're close to that. I think they're going to be a passing football team. 40 is a big number, obviously, so I'm not going to sit here and say that's going to happen every week. But I think they're going to be a passing football team.
Well, let's take a look. I've got
33 to 35 is my temp total for Dak per week.
I have him throwing 590 balls, which is a pretty big number, and projecting him to play 16.5 games. That's I'm guessing that's going to be like a 37 a game. Let's see here. 590 divided by 16.5, 36 times a game, which might be a little on the higher end.
That would not surprise me at all.
Yeah. Now, real quick before we move on, Greg, I was, pretty impressed by Amari Cooper last year. Actually, I thought despite the addition of CeeDee Lamb, to me it felt like he was like the alpha dog, like kind of the offense kind of went through him a little bit, the passing offense. Your thoughts on what you saw to Cooper last year? I was actually very impressed.
Yeah, I think you got to be careful though, because Prescott wasn't there for 3/4 of the season. Yeah. So, I mean, Cooper's a good player. He's always been a player that, and I don't have an answer for this, but he's always been a player where he has 3 or 4 great games, and then he has a lot of games where he's not a factor at all. I can't speak to why that's the case. I never understand that. I just don't know why that occurs.
It's actually on him, to be honest with you. To answer your question, I could tell you from talking to the coaches over the years,
they think it's on him.
Yeah, it's been his commitment, and he gets, he gets into these ruts. Now, he didn't last year, which is a good sign.
Right. Not as much. He had 3 stinkers, but he was also dealing with Andy Dalton.
Yeah. Right. And it's hard to evaluate their situation because their line was decimated. Yeah. By the way,
that's what I'm saying, John. It's hard to evaluate. Yeah. But Cooper always has 3 or 4 games too that are phenomenal. and then that gives him numbers. You
Boy,
know,
early on, though, and I know, again, they were throwing it 50 times a game, but man, the targets with Dak 14, 9,
yeah,
12, 16. Ooh, boy.
yep.
Defense probably not going to be that great, as Adam mentioned. Pass rush is probably an issue. Linebacker, Parsons, we'll see what roles Vander Esch and Jalen Smith kind of settle into, I guess, and Kelvin Joseph. Trayvon Diggs was great, but let's move on to, let's go to the Giants. And Adam and I have talked about this a lot. Adam, at the end of the day, let's go to you. Love the addition of Kenny Golladay. Wasn't a huge fan of Kadarius Toney, that pick, but look, we're fantasy people, so we're not against it.
Why don't you like Kadarius Toney?
Because I thought they had enough at receiver. I'm very concerned about the offensive line with Daniel Jones. I feel like he doesn't process real well. He's prone to turnovers. I want to reinforce a line in front of him. And I'm not sure that they've done that.
They got three guys who are third round or better picks on the O-line.
I know, but Adam, they're not that great. Right?
Yeah, they're okay. I mean, they just didn't address it. Remember, they cut Zeitler, who signed a big deal with Baltimore, which is, you would think with the Giants cutting Zeitler, maybe he's not the player he once was, but the fact that Baltimore thought he was, they're paying him a lot of money, so they cut a starting guard. They've had, Will Hernandez is back. We'll see if Parrott is the right tackle. Andrew Thomas was up and down as being kind. Now, Solder, we're early here in May, so I do wonder if Solder what they're going to do with Solder, because he is, he's back for this last year. The interior is not the greatest. It's a below average line, so there's some concern there, but they're so loaded at receiver. Getting Kyle Rudolph, and he'll be ready for week 1. It's just he's not going to do much before September.
He'll help their blocking, actually.
Right, and Ingram doesn't have to. Not that Ingram would ever be in line, but he definitely will be catching. He'll be out there as a slot tight end, and you get Barkley back. There's a ton of offensive talent. It's just, hey, can they protect Jones, and can he deliver the ball accurately? And his variances are he's just so up and down. But and we should mention this. His 5th-year option is due next May. This season goes a lot into that, where they pick it up or not.
And they picked up an extra number 1 pick, by the way, right? So if Daniel Jones doesn't get it done this year, they could turn that page.
Theoretically, yes. Yep.
Greg, I think to answer your question, I would have felt better if they invested in a number 1 pick and a really nice lineman. I don't even care where, interior, tackle.
Yeah,
Tony's nice.
You have to look at how they probably see it. Okay, they drafted Andrew Thomas with a number 1 pick. Okay, so he's going to play tackle. Matt Parrott was a 3rd round pick. Okay, and he's actually a really talented guy who I'm sure they feel with a full off season will take a significant step up and likely be the right tackle. Hernandez was a 2nd round pick. Okay, so now you're dealing with, and I'm just looking at the depth chart right now. So if it's Lemieux and Gates, and again, I guess that remains to be seen. So that's where you'd say, hey, maybe those guys are not super strong. But the other 3 guys, they probably feel pretty good about. And, again, you never have enough offensive linemen. We know that. But they wanted a receiver because, as Adam could probably attest, there was a lot of talk at pick 11 before the Eagles moved up ahead of them that they were going to take Devonta Smith. So they clearly had their eyes on a receiver. They're building weapons here. And they've got a lot of weapons.
But might it be a little bit of a moot point if Daniel Jones doesn't progress? Greg, as you know, I've been a Daniel Jones. I'm something of an apologist. I think he's very talented. I'm rooting for him. Obviously, I'm sure.
Well, I think this is also where we get caught up in. It has to happen right now because Jones had a pretty good rookie season. The only knock on his rookie season would be that he fumbled a few too many times, okay? But as far as playing the position of quarterback, he had a good rookie season. Then last year, the entire Giants offense was bad, okay? People were hurt on the O-line. They lacked weapons, and Jones struggled. So, I know it's easy to say, well, if he doesn't have a good year, and maybe that's the case. None of us can answer that. But I think it's really difficult to decide that Daniel Jones is not a good player right now.
Look, he's 24, just turned 24, by the way. Or getting ready to turn, getting ready to turn 24. So he's still very young.
New
obviously.
system last year, second year now in this system. He's obviously a smart guy. Weapons are there, a lot of weapons. They can line up in a lot of different personnel packages. I mean, they've got tight ends, they've got wide receivers. This is going to be an interesting offense conceptually. I don't know if anybody else has a feel for it, but I'm not sure what they'll hang their hat on here.
Yeah, I mean, Adam, because they were looking apparently, as we mentioned, to get Devontae Smith and Kadarius Toney, a little bit of a different player. So, but clearly they want to surround Daniel Jones with as many weapons as possible. But actually, Greg, let me go back to you on Daniel Jones, because might his issue be somewhat similar to Sam Darnold in that he might not be able to just process very quickly. I mean, he did make some pretty quick decisions his rookie year.
Well, I think there was a lack of decisiveness to him. Now, when you see that, that's hard to know whether it's because he's not seeing it, or maybe he's just not comfortable. Maybe he didn't have a lot of confidence in who he was throwing to. Only he could answer that. I can't answer why there was at times a lack of decisiveness to his game. And then when you're not decisive as a quarterback, you get stuck in the pocket, obviously, and bad things usually happen. Because even though he's got some mobility, he's not a runaround guy. So he got stuck a lot. And like I said, he'd have to tell you why that is. But, I think that's something they feel with weapons now and another year in Jason Garrett's system, that they probably feel that can be cleaned up.
I think, Adam, back to you. I feel like I got tipped off on what was going to happen when I talked with Jordan Renan, maybe third week in August, where I said, "Hey, how's Jordan Renan of ESPN? How's Daniel Jones doing?" He said, "Well, it's been a little uneven in camp, like not real comfortable," to Greg's point. So I think maybe we'll get tipped off this summer if we're getting great reports in year two of Jason Garrett's offense with these weapons and with the talent that Daniel Jones brings to the table. Then I'll feel good, but we're not there yet. Your thoughts there?
Yeah. The good thing is, Greg was touching on it. They've got speed like you can't. I mean, all sorts of speed with Tony, Ross, and Slayton, right? Shepard is a very good slot receiver when healthy, and that we know that's a problem, but he's very talented. Galladay's a true X. That this is what they've needed. They didn't have last season. So the excuses are over. He's just got to play better, but he is only his third year.
So let me ask you guys a question. A year ago, how did we talk about Baker Mayfield?
Well, he was the same way.
I was concerned. My God.
Yeah, he was coming off a terrible season. Yeah, It's the same thing, Greg.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, all I'm saying is, and now Mayfield with a good system, and Adam knows that system well as I do, had a very nice year, and we'll see. I mean, I think, and again, we're talking fantasy, so I know it's sometimes different than talking about, football in a strict
real
sense.
world.
Right, real world football. But all I'm saying is, I think that if we're talking football, it's hard for me as someone who sits here and watches tape all the time and talks to coaches to sit here and say, well, Daniel Jones can't play based on what happened last year.
Oh, yeah. We need it. First of all, we need another year. He's only played 2 seasons. You can't just give up on a guy. But we need to see progress. We definitely need to see progress with him.
Greg, to your point, though, and to my point about Baker Mayfield, yeah, I was very concerned at the conclusion of the 2019 season. But then they went out and got Jack Conklin. Then they drafted Wills, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I think that's where it all started. I would attribute Baker Mayfield's year 3 success to arguably the best offensive line in football. And
the other thing too is Barkley was not there last year, and my guess is they would like Barkley. I don't think they're going to give him the ball 380 times, but I think they would like Barkley to be a foundation of the offense. Whereas last year, hey, Wayne Gallman had a really nice season for the Giants, given who he is and what he was asked to do. But, Barkley is a big time player, and hopefully he can play a full season. That changes things.
No doubt. Adam, roles here. Kenny Galladay, your number one outside receiver.
Yeah, he'll be the X. I mean, the pass target tree will be Galladay will definitely be number one. After that, theoretically should be Ingram or Shepard. The problem with Shepard is he has trouble staying healthy. He's had all sorts of injury issues. It could be Shepard as the 2, it could be Ingram as the 2. Those will be your top 3. I don't think Slayton's going to be much of a factor anymore. It's just the way it is.
Greg, your thoughts on Obviously, you know Jason Garrett. You've studied Kadarius Toney. Your thoughts on, how they can utilize him immediately, and let's assume he grows in his rookie
Well,
year. I mean, what might he be doing at the end of the year?
they drafted Tony in the first round, so he's not going to be just used as, hey, he lines up here and that's it. Because as Adam said, if Shepard's healthy, and Shepard's played outside too. Now, was he ideally an outside guy? No. But Tony's can line up in multiple positions, which he did at Florida, by the way. You can even line him up in the backfield. So, assuming he picks things up, he's going to get meaningful snaps, and I think you'll see him move around. You'll see him as a motion guy. You'll see him as a jet sweep guy. You'll see him doing a lot of different things. They've got a bunch of guys who can line up in different spots. I'm interested, was it Adam who said, Adam, you feel Slayton could not be a factor here?
I just don't think he's going to be the guy that the reason, just so you understand, the reason why they drafted Tony and they brought John Ross in, and the big one was obviously Galladay. Slayton just did not take the step with Daniel Jones that they were expecting. This is the way it was explained to me. I'm going to say, I don't know, last November, I was talking to someone with the Giants, and they were, for some reason, Jones and Slayton, you would know better by your tape study, Greg, but I could just tell you the way they felt. I started to get the picture that Slayton was not, and I didn't know they were going to do all this. Trust me, I didn't know that.
Right. And again, we're not, the one thing we're not is we're not there. We don't know how studies. We don't know all that stuff.
Right. But I could tell you, Slayton did not step up to the plate. Did he have a decent amount of catches? Yes. But he just, for whatever reason, he was not who they thought he would be last season. And they're telling you by all these transactions. It's just remarkable. The Giants of all teams, Galladay, Tony, John Ross, and not that he'll make the team, but Dante Pettis is there, former second round.
Don't forget Kelvin Benjamin. Do not forget Kelvin Benjamin.
Right, who's going to play H-back and receiver if he could stay under 250 pounds. And Austin Mack was a surprise last year.
Although I wish I could forget Kelvin Benjamin's existence, honestly, because he's been a little annoying. Greg, real quick on Ingram. There's a big year for Ingram, final year of his rookie deal. I personally felt, I don't know if you recall it, but it was so slow going early on. Like, wow, can we get this guy the ball? I did see him come on down the stretch. He got targeted, only one touchdown, but I did see some improvement with Jason Garrett. I kind of wondered if Jason Garrett was just feeling his way out with Evan Ingram first half of the season.
I think he was probably feeling his way out with a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting because it's another team with weapons now. I have no idea, John, how this is going to map out. I mean, they got a lot of guys who can line up in different spots. They have a lot of multi-positional players. I don't think we know who's going to be getting the meaningful snaps right now. Now, you don't draft Kadarius Toney in the first round and not to put the guy on the field.
I would argue that you kind of brought in Galladay. I feel like you're going to hang your hat on.
Well,
Galladay.
he's playing. No, he's playing the most snaps.
Yeah, Galladay's the guy. I mean, he was signed to a big deal. He's a classic X. He's big. He's physical. He can make contested catches. He can win one-on-one. He's one of those guys that when he's covered, he's open. So Galladay's the guy. He's the X.
Hey, let me follow up, Greg, on that point you just made. Did you notice in tape study last year, and it's sort of a discussion on Slayton. The way that I understood it, the timing between Jones and his receivers was not great. And I know Shepard missed some time, but has he really had it in his 2 years? Did he really have a true X?
No.
No.
And you would think this is a big step for them, getting a guy who could.
And what Jones is going to have to do, which wasn't really a problem as a rookie, but I thought it was a problem last year. And again, that's why only he could tell you, is Jones is going to have to get comfortable throwing it to Galladay, even when Galladay appears covered.
He's always covered. He's Mr. Contested Catches guy. But what I like about it is, there's a guy in Galladay who can make plays at all three levels of the defense. You'll take your shots to him. But, Greg, on those 3rd and 6th plays, if Barkley's covered or something, like you just throw him a quick little inbreaker with the physicality and move the sticks, right?
Well, you have to feel comfortable with that. I mean, obviously in Detroit, where Galladay came from, Matthew Stafford's never had a problem turning it loose. Jones is going to have to become that guy.
Anybody else have anything on these Giants before we move on? Tough call, tough team, kind of all comes down to the quarterback. A lot of weapons, but we need the quarterback to maximize these weapons.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to add, Greg made a very good point on Barkley. We seem to forget, and I know he's come back from a torn ACL. If he's anywhere close to what he was before the injury, Jason Garrett is an old school balance team. They're not going to ask him to throw the ball 37 times a game if they could help it. And their defense is pretty competitive. But when they throw it, they're so deep in available pass targets. It's just crazy how many pass targets they have. I mean, between Slayton, Galladay, Shepard, Tony, we'll see what his role is. There and obviously Ingram.
The other thing too is to play off what Adam just said, and then we'll move on. Is even if they want to bring Barkley back a little slowly, Devontae Booker is a nice second back. So I mean, we've seen that through his career. That's what he is. So I mean, they can run the football. I mean, they're not going to drop back 40 times a game by choice, by any means, no matter how many weapons they have.
Do you know that Devontae Booker turns 29 in a couple days?
Me too. How about that?
How did that come from?
Greg, what do you think of? Well, real quick, your thoughts on the defense last year. I know you thought they were very disciplined. Now you had Azeez Ojulari. You got a little James Bradbury now with Dory Jackson. Yeah, I really like this team. I feel like they're ready to compete. What do you think of the defense, and what do you think of them?
I thought the defense was pretty good, given that they didn't have great players. I thought that Patrick Graham did a really good job. Obviously Leonard Williams had his best season. I think that, I mean, I really liked Ojulari's tape. I think they expect him to be a factor. I don't know how many snaps he plays, but I think they expect him to be a factor. I thought the rookie Darnay Holmes was a really nice slot player. Adoree Jackson's been very up and down in his career. They drafted the kid from UCF, Aaron Robinson, in the 3rd round. And Robinson played both outside and slot at UCF. And it would not surprise me if he competes with Adoree Jackson on the outside.
Wow. I guess you didn't get, by the way, back to offense, Gary Brightwell. I guess you didn't get to him.
No.
Out of Arizona. Okay. Yeah. I think it was a 7th.
But, they also signed, and we have no idea what he is because he missed a whole season due to COVID. They signed Armstead, Raquel Armstead, former Temple kid. I like him. Now, I don't know if he can still play. Who knows what the season off with COVID. I mean, he was the one guy that had severe complications. Yeah. So I couldn't begin to tell you that, but he's a grinder. He's a sustaining grinder.
Also have Elijah Penny, and who was there last year, Rashad's brother, and then Corey Clement as well here.
Well, one thing I do want to add on Dory Jackson, he'll be starting. There won't be. They owe him 27 over 2 years, and the money's fully guaranteed. He ain't going anywhere. So Dory Jackson Greg's right. I could just tell you from talking to the Titans, they were not happy he didn't play last season.
Mm-hmm.
He's been very up and down since he came in the league.
And I'll tell you what, though, it actually might be good for fantasy, John, if when teams play the Giants, they're going to go after Jackson because he's just not a consistent player.
Yeah,
they're paying him $13 million a year, which is absurd for a guy coming off.
And Bradbury traveled quite a bit, not quite a bit. Oh yeah, but definitely did travel.
So not every week, but he did travel.
Right. So Jackson's the guy teams are going to go after.
Graham Barfield, real quick. Saquon Barkley at his ADP. Let's even knock it down one spot. Let's say Saquon Barkley at 5, Graham. Are you in or out?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the biggest question we're talking about all these great weapons, talking about Galladay, talking about Tony. Sure, the offensive line is a concern. My biggest concern with this team is, can Jason Garrett make all these pieces work? Because like Adam alluded to, man, he is an old school, let's run the football type of coach. Last year, even without Barkley for a full season, the Giants were one of the most run-heavy teams in situation neutral game scripts. So that's like within 7-8 points. I think we're going to see a big dose of Barkley. Maybe not week 1 or 2, but once he kind of gets his legs back underneath him, I think we're going to see a lot of Barkley. I think that after McCaffrey and Cook, I think Henry, Barkley, and Kamara are really close at like 3, 4, and 5, John. And I really don't have like a strong opinion on where to go if you're at 5. I think if one of those 3 are available at 5, I think that's completely fine. And, I kind of, for like half PPR leagues, I've been kind of leaning on Henry a little bit more because Barkley and Kamara should have a slightly higher floor in full PPR, but really that tier after Cook and McCaffrey, I think, is really close.
Jason Garrett, I just went back and looked, his last 5 years, kind of all over the map in terms of offense. 6th 1 year, then 22nd in points for, then 14th, then 5th, then 31st. Joe Dolan, Saquon Barkley's on the board, 5 overall. McCaffrey, Cook, Kamara, and let's say Henry are gone. Are you going Barkley or someone else?
I'm taking Barkley. That's where I'm going to take him. He can catch the ball. Everybody, I think you can nitpick pretty much everybody at the top, maybe with the exception of McCaffrey, but even he's coming off an injury. Dalvin Cook might be the safest, but no, Barkley's a top 5 pick for me. I think there's questions about Jonathan Taylor's role in the passing game with Wentz there. Kelsey at 5 isn't for me. I think you can make the argument for Devontae Adams if Aaron Rodgers were to say he's playing, but Aaron Rodgers hasn't said he's playing. So that's why I'm taking Barkley there. But I'm going to change gears here a little bit. Adam, they signed Kyle Rudolph here. I'm in no way enthused by this signing, but do
he's
you
there
know
to block? Yeah, but he's there to block.
So is that going to affect Ingram at all?
No, he's just there to block. That's what he
Yeah.
is. He's in wide tight end, and that's the way that they're going to use him. And is Levine Toilolo still there? All he does is block. He's
As
a
of
giant.
now.
He's a giant.
there.
Yeah.
He might not even, some of these guys aren't going to make the team because they still have Caden Smith who did well. I mean, they're not going to be carrying 5 tight ends.
Right, but Toilolo might have to stay because Rudolph will not be ready until late August, early September. But he look, the reason why the guy got his last contract was because of his ability to block, and that's what he does.
Do they go a little bit more 2 tight end sets here, even though they have this embarrassment of riches?
Boy, I'll tell you, that's a great question. And this is Jason Garrett he's not been put to the test like this before with all this talent. I'm very interested to see if they're more 12 or 11. Theoretically, they should be more 11 with the talent that they have, but
right.
I don't know yet.
Well,
But
John,
they also brought in Rudolph.
You mentioned, John, that Garrett's track record is pretty mixed. Got to keep in mind, Tony Romo is probably the most underrated quarterback of all time. They had an all-world offensive line when Garrett was there.
He hasn't called plays, just so you know. He has not called play before the Giants. Remember, he handed off to Scott Linehan.
Yep,
and
that's what I was just about to say. Linehan was calling plays.
Right.
Yeah.
So so we'll see.
Garrett, his rep, Adam, is probably what, quarterback tutor, like number one.
Yeah, the last thing on Daniel Jones, I know talking to some of the Cowboys coaches over the years, though he was far removed from calling plays, when they would see him work with Romo, and then Dak, he's really a good teacher of the quarterback position, like really good. These guys said one of the best they had seen, and that obviously as a head coach, people could say what they want about him, but he does teach fundamentals very well, and he's very hard on it. So year 3, let's hope that Jones, takes the step that we've been looking for him to make. Because, man, I know we're going to talk probably Philly next. Tell me another NFL team other than maybe Denver that could go with pass target group. I mean, they're legit 5-6 deep, and even John Ross, for goodness sake, who could run.
For me, and we're going to be talking to people all summer. To me, it all comes down to how are we looking in camp? Is Daniel Jones sharp? Is he more consistent? Do they perform pretty well in the preseason games?
Pass pro too, John. Pass pro. Yeah. Pass pro.
Yeah. If so, I will be in on Daniel Jones at his ADP. I will also be in on Jalen Hurts, even at his ADP, which is kind of high at 85, I believe, as we move on to the Philadelphia Eagles here on the Fantasy Points 2021 offseason powwow here. It's a little bit of a preview of all 32 teams. Greg Cosell, Adam Caplan, Joe Dolan, Graham Barfield. I'm John Hansen. Let's get into Philly, Greg. Offensively, I know it's a projection and obviously we don't know much yet, but your thoughts on how things change under Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen in terms of the offense? Any noticeable change?
I don't think we know the answer to that. I mean, I think we're at the time of year where everybody talks about things, and I don't think we know, because I don't think coaches, they watch tape, right now, but then they got to get on the field with their players, and that's just starting, and obviously I think we're going to have a pretty normal off season, but I mean, I find it interesting, and maybe Adam knows more. I've been grinding away because I had a project that I had to do with NFL Films, and now I'm starting to watch tape again. But so I haven't talked to anybody in the last number of weeks because I had to get this project done. And Adam, talks more to people than I do generally. But I thought it was very intriguing that they came out, unless they've changed it since, and pretty much said that the quarterback situation is open. Adam, any change going on there?
I mean, look, they want and expect Hurts to start. Nick Sirianni, their head coach, he's super big on accountability and particularly competition. So he doesn't feel the need to name Hurts the starter.
But I think that's interesting in and of itself.
Yeah. But
So,
look, if Hurts doesn't start week 1 against who the hell they're playing in Atlanta, then he really had a terrible training camp in preseason. They are fully expecting Hurts. I could just tell you, barring a trade for Deshaun Watson, if Hurts doesn't start, he'll have to have had a very disappointing training camp and also preseason, which we're going to have.
And Adam, I think that, they'll give him some rope too during the season. I talked with Dave Spadaro about this recently. You're not yanking him in week 3 if he's struggling, I don't think. Maybe week 6 or 7.
Right. They really want to evaluate Hurts. I mean, they need to know. And
well, they have to evaluate Hurts because Joe Flacco is not the answer. And, it's so interesting how this all plays out because Jamie Newman, coming off his junior year at Wake Forest, and then he obviously transferred to Georgia and sat out, but coming off that junior year at Wake Forest, he was in the conversation as a top 60 pick as a quarterback, and then he sat out and was an undrafted free agent. So I'm not saying he's in the mix, but I'm just saying it's interesting how this stuff plays out. So all you guys are right. Jalen Hurts right now on this present roster is the quarterback. And what I guess, John, what you're asking me is what is their offense going to look like if he's the quarterback? It's not going to look like the offense that Sirianni just came from because that was Phillip Rivers. It's not going to look like that.
Right.
Now, when I say it's not going to look like that, the playbook is going to be the same because when all said and done, all the playbooks, everybody has their playbook. It's just what parts of the playbook you use and you emphasize and you focus on. They'll be focusing on different parts when it comes to Jalen Hurts.
One thing that's big is obviously the status of Zach Ertz. That'll tell us a lot. I mean, sometimes we could get tipped off in terms of what the offense is going to look like by the moves that teams have made, and not really seeing a ton here until we see something develop potentially with Zach Ertz. Devontae Smith, obviously the Heisman Trophy winner. I like the pick. Eagle fans like the pick. Your thoughts on? I feel like he's kind of a plug-in number 1 receiver, Greg. And do you think that this is a better situation for Jalen Reagor, who did seem a little miscast as kind of the one relate, with Hurts? Might Reagor be better off, playing second fiddle to Devontae Smith?
Well, I'm going to be fascinated to see how they use both Reagor and Smith, because I think, to me, Smith is not a true X. Now, that doesn't mean he can't line up there depending on who your opponent is, because if an opponent plays a lot of off coverage, then Smith can line up at X. But I don't think he's a true X the way we just spoke about Kenny Golladay being a true X. So to me, Smith is a guy you want off the ball. You want him with movement. You want him with free access. You want him to stride out. The question is Reagor an X? Could he be? I think more so than Smith, if Reagor were to reach his potential, which I think is pretty good. But I'm curious, how they see the rest of this receiving core. I mean, Fulgham had 3-4 good games. He's still there. Hightower's still there. Ward has actually done a really nice job as a slot. Later in the season, Watkins had some plays. I'm not sure how they see, in an ideal world, Smith and Reagor are the 2 main guys.
Yeah.
But you're dealing with a rookie and a second year player. So I think I don't want to say there are questions as if they can't play, but there are some unknowns.
Adam, might Fulgham be a key then?
Yeah.
Because he could be the X.
Yeah, he could be. By the way, they have the NFL's youngest receiver core, one of only 2 teams to not have a vested veteran, which is almost hard to believe.
Yeah.
Right now, if the season started today, John, you brought up Ertz because Ertz is still on the team.
Mm-hmm.
What I do believe, if they're able to move Ertz, if he's not on the team in September, my sense is there'll be more 11 than 12 in terms of structure. This is going to be an old school West Coast offense, as I understand it. Big timing routes. Not that accuracy isn't important. Obviously, it's important at quarterback. Super important to have pinpoint accuracy because a lot of crossers, a lot of short air rack. Run after the catch is a major component, I'm told, by 2 people in this offense.
And that's a function of the quarterback more than wide receivers.
Right. And you got to lead that guy and you got to be accurate. And this is, I know from early on here, I had heard it back in February, like this is going to be completely different from structure than Doug Peterson's offense. And this is just going to be a different mindset. So, and I like what Steichen said. He talked about Rager in his press conference last week, and he talked about his ability to run after the catch. That is going to be very big with these receivers.
Greg, well, we all know in the fantasy world that Jalen Hurts is a cheat code, as we say, because when a quarterback runs and no one ran like he did down the stretch, it's great for fantasy. We know that, but we also need him to be, serviceable and capable throwing the football. He did turn that ball over quite a bit. Talk about the pros and the cons of Jalen Hurts, the small sample size, the good, the bad, and in between.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you saw is what probably was expected. I think you saw a guy that's capable of making some good throws from the pocket, and then you saw a guy that's also capable of not really having a clearly defined sense of timing, anticipation. Ball location can be very inconsistent and erratic. I think that's what he was coming out, and I think people knew that. I mean, he was a surprise second-round pick. So, I think you're dealing. Let's put it this way. I think you want to use his legs as part of your offense.
Yeah.
That's what he brings to the table, that he's capable of doing that. Now, he's obviously not Lamar Jackson. He's a totally different kind of runner. But I think you want to use his legs by design. And you probably don't want to stop him from running when he drops back if he feels that he sees it. You don't want to say to Jalen Hurts, don't run with the ball. So you're trying to define the reads and the throws for him, which is tougher when it's 3rd and long, obviously, than when it's 1st and 10 or 2nd and 4. You want to define the reads and the throws, and then allow him to use his athletic dimension. He's got an athletic dimension that you don't want to stop him from using. Now, we haven't talked about the run game at all.
Yeah.
I think they would like the run game to be a factor. Don't forget, Sirianni just came from Indy, where down the stretch, Jonathan Taylor carried the ball 20 times a game. So, I don't know if they see Sanders carrying it 20 times a game, but I think they want to run the football.
Yeah, Adam, again, I talked with Dave Spadaro, and he feels pretty good recently. He feels pretty good about Miles Sanders in his role. He doesn't believe touches are going to be a problem at all. And, running behind a quarterback like Jalen Hurts can open up opportunities. And they're talking about Miles Sanders in the passing game, using him more.
Yeah, well, apparently Lane Johnson spilled the beans. Apparently the screen game is going to be major, in recent years with the Eagles. And part of it is because Wentz's unwillingness to check the ball down. He just doesn't like doing it.
They were huge in Indy. The screen game,
right? In 17, it was a part of it, but after 17, with the screen game, for whatever reason, we don't have time to go into the coaching staff and all the issues. But apparently, in this offense, screen game is going to be big. And I'll tell you what, Kerryon Johnson will give them a breather every once in a while on 3rd down. His deal is pass protection. And then the other thing is Gainwell. Now, I talked to Ryan Silverfield, his coach at Memphis, yesterday, and he just thinks that he had a great point. He's like, can you imagine if they put Gainwell and Sanders on the field at the same time?
Which they will.
Yeah. And line Gainwell at the slot. And Greg, you had broken down beautifully Gainwell's tape for the draft guide, and you were talking about how to line him up at X. So what could this thing conceptually, with all the speed that they have, and I get these guys aren't fully developed at receiver.
Well, here's what they're going to try to do. Keep in mind who the quarterback is. The quarterback's not fully developed yet as a true understander, not only of the offense, because it's a new one, and of defenses in the NFL. So what do you try to do when the quarterback is that guy? What you have to try to do is, through the use of personnel, formation, and concepts, is you try to define it as clearly as possible for him so that he can develop as he's learning. Okay, that's what you're trying to do. You're not going to try to put too much on Jalen Hurts' plate. You're going to try to really define it for him, because when you put out certain personnel, when you line up in certain formations based on the opponent you're playing in film study, you're anticipating, based on probability and tendency, what you're going to get defensively. So that's what you're trying to do. You're not asking Hurts to come to the line of scrimmage and have to start to figure it out. Okay, you want the personnel and the formation to do that for him. That's what you're trying to do with Jalen Hurts. And they've got a lot of ways to do that. And I personally think Gainwell's a big factor in that.
Back to Devontae Smith, how much of a factor is he? Obviously played with Hurts in college. He can line up anywhere. I feel like Devontae Smith.
Which Rager can too, by the way.
Yeah, true.
So they have those kinds of weapons, players that can line up anywhere in your formation, and they all can be movement guys in terms of motion. So that's what they're going to try to do.
Greg, isn't it funny? 2 years ago, you told us on our show on Sirius that you're just going by what the tapes told you, that the Eagles were the slowest offense on tape.
Yeah.
Right.
Now you look at you look at these guys. Okay, Rager could fly, explosive. Smith is explosive.
Smith is an explosive player.
Right.
I don't care what his, he didn't run a 40.
Right.
I don't care what his 40 time is.
Right.
Stylistically, you know, certain guys just, you can tell by watching the tape, they can move. Smith can move.
So Fulgham, he's not a speedster, but he runs well for his size.
Yeah.
High-towered Watkins could fly. You told us that Goddard's a way better athlete than Ertz. They've got the ability to move here.
Yeah.
Adam, if Ertz is on the roster, can we still draft Goddard with confidence? Because it does feel to me like they want Goddard to step up
this
and
is
be
what
the clear
I
tight end
heard.
go-to.
Yeah, this is what I heard from a couple people, that this staff, and I guess they studied him when they were with the Colts in 2018. They are very high on him. They liked him. They liked his tape coming out of college.
You're talking about Goddard?
Yeah, they like him a lot. So even if Ertz by surprise is on the roster this fall, I still think Goddard will be the guy at tight end. Now the question is, what does that really mean in terms of targets? It's impossible to answer. We need to get through training camp first. I got to see if Ertz is on the team. How much is he going to the field? I don't know. And then the problem with Ertz being on the team is, to justify the $8.5 million, you're going to be more 12 personnel. I know that they don't want to do that. I'm not saying they're going to be heavy 12 like in the past, where they're basically leading the NFL in it. But you got to justify the guy being on the field. If they're paying him 8.5, he's got to play.
Well, that'll be interesting to see if that plays out, because that won't be their best use of personnel given what's on the roster.
I agree.
It'll be very
get three wide
interesting.
out. Yeah, and with that speed, I agree. Yep.
Well, we'll worry about the defense later. We'll see who starts opposite Darius Slay. We'll see if these old guys can, still some names up here in the front. But I just wanted to touch on the offensive line.
That I want to get to that. Yeah, so I'll tell you what. Lane Johnson's good to go. Brandon Brooks is good to go. Kelsey hasn't felt this good in years, I was told. Siamalo is a solid player, their left guard. Mailata will be their left tackle. He hasn't won the job yet, but he'll win it.
Wow. So Dillard's your swing tackle?
Well, if they don't trade him, yeah, because Mailata, I could just tell you that the former coaching staff before they got fired, they felt the light went on from Mailata as the season went along. Because remember, he'd never played football in his life until 18. He started to get it, and they have not seen anybody like this before. I mean, 6'8", 360 pounds with feet like he has by the way, his arms are really long. Where Dillard's arms are very short for left tackle. Now the chances, John, of this line holding up for 16 games is slim, based on three guys in their 30s. But the talent's there. The talent's there.
Let's move on to the football team here. Ronnie Rivera.
I have one question, John. I wanted to get to a couple. I know we want to go. Yeah. First and foremost, I want to talk to Greg about how Hurts played vis-a-vis how you evaluated him coming out of college. Were you surprised, or did he play as expected? And what did you see from Mailata on tape? Like Adam said, he's a unique player. Those are the two most interesting guys on this offense for me.
Well, Ertz last year, to me, when he did play, did not look quite the same. Ertz,
I mean Hurts, Jalen.
Oh, Jalen Hurts. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. When I watched Jalen Hurts in college, and he was in a very defined offense at Oklahoma. All quarterbacks do well there because it's very defined. I made that in my notes when I did my evaluation. I kind of said, well, what is he? How will teams see him? Will they see him as someone like Lamar Jackson, where you have to structure an offense around the run game as much more of a foundation? Or will they see him as someone who can develop into a quarterback that has running ability, like a Dak Prescott down the road? I didn't think he was Dak Prescott coming out. So that's where I stood on Hurts. I think that's kind of what he showed last year in the 4 games in which he started. I think it was 4. Now we go through an off season and we'll see. Mailata clearly improved. He clearly improved as the year went on. And I thought that was pretty evident. You could see that. He had a few bad snaps every game. where his technique got away from him, which is not surprising because he's not ingrained in repetitive technique and repetitive mechanics of the position, given that he hasn't grown up playing the position. But I thought he improved, and I think he'll end up being a good player. And they've got some depth. I mean, this O-line could be pretty good.
Well, certainly if they keep Dillard, their depth at tackle would be decent. Moving on to that football team and looking good, looking real good here. Coming off a 7-9 campaign, Ronnie Rivera's first year, Turner, you had Fitzmagic into the mix. I'll actually start with Dyami Brown, Greg, the rookie. I know you think he could, probably line up in multiple places. A lot of people think he's very fast and all that, but I think you have some concerns in terms of maybe his ability to get over the top of NFL corners.
I like Dyami Brown. I just didn't, he was one of those guys to me that, and even though he's totally different body type, he kind of reminded me of James Washington coming out of Oklahoma State. Guys who were vertical players in college who I wasn't exactly sure if they'd be vertical players in the NFL. Now, I think I'm probably in the minority on Dyami Brown in that most people say that's what he'll be. And he could well be. I watched his 2019 tape and his 2020 tape, and I thought he improved in 2020. I think he's a good prospect. Now, to me, he got drafted exactly where he should have been drafted, which I believe was the 3rd round. And given who else they have on their roster, I'm curious to see if he gets meaningful snaps here because we know McLaurin's getting snaps. We know Curtis Samuel's playing. They like Kelvin Harmon, and Kelvin Harmon's an interesting player given that you have McLaurin and Samuel. So, I'm not sure where Brown fits into this, John, but yeah. I thought, I think Brown is a good prospect. I just didn't think he was a special prospect.
Quite like a rotational guy, not really a guy that's going to get like the dirty work underneath and all that, right?
I don't think he's quite that guy, but we'll see how he develops.
On Harmon, let's leave the knee injury to the side here. His pre-draft tape in 19. What did you think of him coming out of North Carolina State?
I think that Harmon to me was, to be cliched but true, it was kind of a classic possession receiver.
Classic. Big,
physical, tough inside, not a burner, but every once in a while could get over the top because he could run routes. But fit, again, my point is he fits with McLaurin and Samuel because you want that guy. Because even though Logan Thomas has come on and been a solid tight end, he's not a tight end and, who's going to, I don't know, maybe he's going to just keep getting better and better. That's a tough call. But Harmon to me fits as the 3rd wideout with this group because he's a tough, physical, competitive, between the numbers kind of guy.
And Greg, if it's not Kelvin Harmon, also a really good red zone receiver there at North Carolina State, maybe Cam Sims, who did look pretty good. Is a big guy who can run a little bit, and we're not going to forget about Antonio Gandy Golden. Greg,
they also signed Adam Humphries, who, when he's healthy, has been a very serviceable slot receiver. So, we know McLaurin and Samuel, they're definites. But the 3rd guy, I think, is probably a little bit open for discussion.
Yeah, and it's certainly all the players that we've obviously mentioned. Logan Thomas, I don't know if you have any other insight. We all know he was great. I mean, came on strong, did a lot of work with Alex Smith.
I'm going to throw a name totally out of the blue here, but I really liked his tape. And I think he's going to be one of those guys who just ends up being a solid NFL receiver. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Dax Milne, the 7th round pick from BYU. I really liked his tape. He knows how to run routes. He knows how to get open. If you watch his tape, I don't think the ball ever hit the ground. I mean, this guy catches the football. I think he's going to be one of those guys we're talking about in 3 years. And when I say talking about, I don't mean he's going to catch 90 balls for 1,400 yards, John. That's not my point. But I think you guys know what I mean.
Yeah. Wow.
I think he's a really intriguing player.
I tell you what, John, if you talked to us last year about this, I would have really questioned their receiver core. Now you get Harmon a year removed from the knee injury. Curtis Samuel, who's a really interesting player. Gandy Gold now has 1 year under his belt. Greg likes this Milne kid.
Mm-hmm. Some hope.
Good.
There's some hope.
Yeah, there definitely is. And the John Bates kid at tight end is an interesting player. The issue though is their offensive line. They've got some real questions at left tackle. I can tell you that.
Well, I'll tell you what, Greg. Though they brought
signed
in
Charles
Sam
Leno.
Cosme.
I can tell you he did not play well last season. Talking to
I
two
know he
people.
didn't play well,
Yeah,
but I mean,
bad.
he's been like a 6 or 7 year starter.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sure they hope that with a new coaching staff now and maybe getting cut and maybe he'll be rejuvenated because he has played well enough in his career. But you're right, last year he did not play well.
I think that right side's been good, although they let Morgan Moses go. I said maybe that's one of the big issues here.
Cosme. I'm assuming Cosme will move to the right side because in the rookie camp he took snaps at left. Morgan Moses, that surprised me. I'm maybe Greg has a better idea because it's not like I'm studying.
Where is Moses now?
He hasn't signed with anyone yet.
He's on his couch.
Yeah.
Oh.
Greg, you got to get into Antonio Gibson because
let's go.
Boy, I was really impressed. I mean, this kid, boy, you want to talk about just the natural power. I saw it.
He's a big dude. I mean, he's close to 230 pounds with really good feet. I would, again, it's a function of the O-line to some degree, but I would expect him to continue to improve. And I'm really curious. Well, Scott Turner essentially runs the North Turner offense, and the run game does matter. So they do want to run the ball. And look, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I mean, the guy, what can you say about the guy? There should be like a special Hall of Fame for this guy. But you also don't want him dropping back by choice 40 times.
Yeah.
I want the Ryan Fitzpatrick Journeyman Hall of Fame. I mean, he's the
guy's going to play with every team in the league by the time he's done.
I mean, I had a coach who worked with him earlier in his career. He said there's just sometimes when no matter what you tell Fitz, he does what he wants. And sometimes it's really good and sometimes it's really bad.
Adam, J.D. McKissick kind of out of nowhere last year, although we did see it coming. 110 targets. Gibson only 44. We know Gibson was a college receiver. I'm thinking 75 plus targets at least for Gibson this year. Or do they keep McKissick in that specialized role?
I mean, look, Gibson had a decent amount of targets for having to learn the running back position on the fly. I mean, I was talking to his college coach yesterday, and when they got him to Memphis, they didn't know what he was because he was over 230. I mean, I don't want to. We interviewed him for Inside the Birds. Ryan Silverfield had a great line. He goes, "We thought he was just an overweight slot receiver. We just didn't know what he was." And the story about him last season was just remarkable. And I remember talking to Washington, because they knew early on he was probably going to be the guy. They didn't want to give him a ton of volume in terms of, okay, you need to do this, and this. But the training at Memphis, because the Silverfield said they give their receivers and their backs a lot of different roles, particularly at running back. They give you got to do this, and this. But Turner did a smart thing. He said, you know what? You'll catch the ball here, but we didn't have an off season with you. Just learn how to run the football. And as you know, he averaged just under 5 yards per carry.
Man, it looked good. Yeah. 75 targets, probably a bit much. Maybe 65, 60 something.
My understanding, John, just so you know, that their plan was not to give him a lot of volume in the pass game. I think they're going to give him a lot.
Well, that's my point. Yeah, exactly.
Now, I'm not saying, 8 targets a game, but he was getting what? 3, just over 3. I think he can get 5
just under 2, maybe.
Well, the big question becomes, do they expand his role in the pass game? I'm not saying just by targets, but by formation. And that's something we don't know yet because this kid was a slot receiver his last year in college, so he can line up as a line of scrimmage receiver. So the question is, in certain situations, is he in the slot? Because they do have other backs. I mean, they still have Peyton Barber, who's a very serviceable number 2 type back. I don't know what Lamar Miller's situation is at this point in his career. There's been injuries. I think they got the kid from Buffalo, Jared Patterson.
Yep.
Really,
that was a good one. As far as the undrafted free agent running backs, I could see him sticking there, Greg.
Yes, me too. I kind of liked his tape. He came in at 5'6" though at his pro day, which is a little short.
Yeah.
Wow. Gibson, I've got for 42 catches. 225 yards or 25 rushing attempts. RB11 on the board here. Greg, how was Ryan Fitzpatrick's tape last year? Because, Adam has told us people he's talked to, they really liked his tape last year. It didn't seem to me.
I was going to say his tape. I thought his tape was very good last year.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, you can line up and play with Ryan Fitzpatrick. There's no question about that. Then you just have to, obviously you try to control him to some degree because he seems to have a couple of those snaps every game, but you probably feel you can take care of that with your play calling.
Graham, I know you have a question about Curtis Samuel here as we wrap up the football team.
Yeah, Adam, I just want to ask you if you've heard anything about how Turner is going to use him, because I know, back when Turner was on the Panther staff in 19, they kind of used him as a deep threat, and he was completely miscast in that role. And last year, they finally used him like in the slot, like 70% of the time. And I think Greg mentioned Adam Humphries is going to play a little bit there.
Yeah,
he's going to be a
multi-purpose. I think you might see him line up. In fact, I know you will. You see him line up in the backfield at some point because he can do it. Slot, they'll use him out wide. I think he's going to be a jack of all trades. And Turner coached him in Carolina, so he knows the player. And let's not forget, they're paying him $11.5 million a season, which is ridiculous. I talked to a team that was in it, and they said they saw him as a $5 million player. They didn't see what Washington did, and obviously Rivera and Turner know him very well. To justify the contract, he's got to get touches. It's not. I could. He's a very interesting, very unique wide receiver because he could do it.
Someone saw me as a $5 million a year player,
yeah.
Greg, real quick, Jamin Davis, the linebacker,
one of my favorite guys in the draft.
The rich get richer.
I'm so disappointed in myself, John. It's one of those guys that I watched him early in the process, okay, and I loved his tape. And toward the end of the draft, when everybody was talking about him and all that, I almost said a couple of times on different shows, I said it would not surprise me at all. And I didn't say it, and I'm pissed at myself. I almost said that it would not surprise me if he's a top 20 pick in the draft.
Wow.
And he was. And
you know what I've learned, Greg?
And the tape tells you that.
Every time I don't go with my initial reaction, I'm wrong. So trust the gut.
Yeah, I know. I mean, that's the way I felt about watching his tape. Because you guys know what I do. I don't get caught up in, he's rising on draft board. I mean, that's all BS. But I watched him, pretty early on. Probably when was the draft? End of April. I probably watched Davis early March. Okay, and I loved his tape. I just came away saying this guy's a 3-down linebacker in the NFL. Now I didn't know if that's going to happen week 1, which I think they'll probably put him out there week 1. But that's what I thought of his tape.
Final thought here on the football team, back to offense, Adam. How many targets does Terry McLaurin get from the pepper, Mr. Fitzmagic, who loves to pepper his top guy with targets?
Well, it all depends. It strictly becomes how much chemistry. It's too early to know because Fitzpatrick is new to this team. I mean, he's on yet another team. McLaurin should be their number 1 pass target. It's not like anyone else would. Curtis Samuel's not going to be a high target guy. He's not going to get 8 a game. I don't see that. I think I think based on this receiver core, I mean, it's deeper. I mean, if he's healthy, he played with 2 different injuries, and very good credit to him. He played with 2 different ankle sprains. One was a high ankle sprain. I could see him 90 to 100 catches this season. I really do.
Well, the good news is for McLaurin is they obviously have way more pieces to take the pressure off from him. I remember that Steelers game, they just bracketed him. I mean, that was like his worst game of the year against the Steelers.
And he was also playing, if I recall correctly, I was told he was playing with a high ankle sprain that game, and he just toughed it out.
Greg, did you notice when you think back, like McLaurin getting doubled a lot? I mean, it really was the only guy in town.
At times, for sure. But they've got weapons now. Plus, McLaurin, surprisingly, he lines up at X, and he's a physical, competitive kid. I mean, that shows up on tape. I mean, he's not big, he's not 210 or 215, and I don't think he's even over 6 feet, but he can line up at X. They've got a lot of weapons here. I'm really curious to see how this maps out.
Real quick, one final thought. I know I said that, but number one, I like the speed. They've added speed, with Samuel and Brown. But do we have any thoughts on the identity of this offense? Obviously, they're probably going to be nice and balanced, but I'm almost thinking it's pass oriented.
No, that's a relative term. Very few teams truly run more than they throw, but Scott Turner, and I've talked with Scott Turner, and I know Adam speaks with them as well. It's very much the Norv Turner offense. They want the run game to be foundational. Now, I can't sit here and say that means they're going to run at 52%, but they want it to be foundational. This is not going to be a drop back, let's throw it around offense. And
Yeah,
the kind of back that can do that because he's big.
right. I do think they're going to sling it though enough.
But again, you have to define that, John.
Right. Certainly not a conservative, kind of a boring offense. I mean, kind of maybe a lean toward, certainly running, sure. But maybe a lean toward, throwing.
Don't forget, they got a really good defense. You could see them take the old school approach of let's throw early to get ahead.
Exactly.
And because our defense then can rush the quarterback and we can rush the quarterback, and then they'll run it to close out games. I think that would be their ideal plan.
And to add to that, the big issue is Fitzpatrick. If he's Fitztragic, John, you're going to have to he's going to make them throw from behind. This is the problem that you get with this guy, because talking to guys who've coached him before,
true. Yeah.
He's got a mind of his own sometimes, and this is why teams fall out of love with this guy.
And I'm not going to sit here and say that he's, obviously Fitzpatrick's the starter, okay?
Yep.
But the coaching staff kind of likes the Heineke kid. I'm not saying he's going to win the job.
Heineke, yeah.
Heineke,
Scott. I saw Scott years ago, and he raved about him, and he throws it very oddly, the way that his passing motion, but it works. You saw what he did against Tampa.
He played very well in the playoff game against the Bucs.
Yep, he did.
Let's move on over to the NFC North behind as usual here. And if you're not a subscriber to fantasypoints.com, welcome to the powwow here, if you will, the live stream. We'll be doing one tomorrow on Wednesday, the 26th. Then we'll do the AFC next week. Early Bird Miss 21 is a promo code that you could use for 10% off your Fantasy Points subscription. Chicago Bears, Adam, when does Justin Fields see the field? I'm with a lot of people who are saying just go with him in week one. I still believe he'll be their guy by September's end at the latest.
Yeah, I'm gonna up my starts total from 7 to 9. It's between 7 and 9 games that he starts. Could it be more? Yes. From what I understand, I know that the team was very happy with the way that he came in the rookie camp. Not that you want to judge anything. He's not competing for a starting job right now. But in terms of coming in, having the right attitude, wants to soak up everything up, they're very happy with that. Dalton, they fully believe he's going to start week one. There's no debate with that right now. We're in May. We're not in August.
You mean you're talking about Andy Dalton?
Yeah. I mean, it's their belief that he'll start week one and beyond. But I learned my lesson in 2012, and when Matt Flynn came in, talking to the Seahawks privately, they never gave any thought to Russell Wilson starting when they drafted him. They got to the OTAs in May. They go, oh my God, whoa. And as you know, wasn't even close in August. So, and I understand Russell Wilson was a 3rd-round pick, not a 1st-round pick like Fields. So let's just see what happens. But their belief right now is that Dalton's definitely starting week one.
Greg, we know your scouting report up on the site in the draft app on Justin Fields. Certainly not a clean, perfect prospect. Still needs to develop a better sense of rhythm and timing and anticipation. A little bit of a see it and throw it guy, but very athletic. Seems like a great leader. Tough. We saw him play hurt in the college playoffs. I just can't wait to see if someone on the Chicago Bears can get the ball down the field to an open Darnell Mooney. I feel like Fields is going to be really good for Mooney, Greg.
They've got some speed. They signed Amir Bird too, and say what you want, but that kid could always run. Again, I'm not there. I know Adam has conversations there with the staff. Barring anything, this is just me talking, my pointless point of view on this. Barring anything really bad through the offseason, I'd start Justin Fields week one. But that's
I agree.
That's
who knows? Yeah, who knows?
Yep.
Because here's what you got. You got a veteran center in Cody White here who can probably handle all the protections that need to be handled early on. Okay. You've got a back in Montgomery. You got a back they drafted in the 6th round that I liked his tape a lot in college, Khalil Herbert. So, I personally would start Justin Fields, but again, we'll see what happens. We got a whole offseason.
Adam, it's so annoying when teams do this too, because it's like, the Baker Mayfield year. Like, why does Tyrod Taylor need to get? I know, he got hurt, but why does he need to get 80% of the first team reps the first 2-3 weeks of camp? Like that I'd love to see them do what Greg
Well,
said.
here's the thing. They because Fields, they got some things to work on with him. They don't want to rush.
Yeah, I know.
They don't.
Yeah.
They're in a position. Nick Foles is not. I mean, he'll be the backup. The most likely, if Dalton is the starter week one, Foles theoretically would be the backup. But the problem they had last year with Foles was this: they had pass protection issues. Let's call it like it is. They had their offensive line did not play very well. They really dropped off last season. Too many times, Foles was stepping into his offensive line. He because he's not mobile like Dalton is. Not that Dalton's a great athlete, but he was better than Foles. Mooney was open, couldn't get him the football. When the front office and the coaches looked at the tape, they were frustrated with the ability to get Mooney the football. Mooney was exactly who they thought he was. He should have been drafted way earlier, super explosive, super serious about his job, and is a good route runner. And he's not perfect, but he's more advanced than you would think as a rookie. And Foles couldn't get him the football. Now, part of it's because Nick doesn't move very well. And the other part is that their line was bad.
And Adam, Matt Nagy, Bill Lazor, DiFilippo, pretty experienced
it's a
coaching
good, really
staff,
good group. Yeah.
Really RPOs guys. Yeah. I think this is a pretty good staff probably for Fields.
Fields for Dynasty Leagues, this is a guy that I want. This is a guy that I might be willing not to, and I don't know how well he'll play this year when he plays, but for the future, this kid's got a lot of gifts. He's a really good kid from talking to people who've known him for a while, well before the Bears. Good kid, coachable. And as you said, John, he's going to be coached. If you look, Lazor's a tough SOB. He coaches very hard. We know DiFilippo does. And Nagy, to his credit, he hands off to his coaches to develop quarterbacks. I think you make a great point. He's in great hands here.
Joe Dolan, here's a hot take for you. Justin Fields with an ADP of like 155 may actually be the best bet to way outproduce his ADP right now. Believe it or not, I feel like he's a slam dunk at 150.
Well, there's a couple of guys. I agree with that. And I think Justin Fields is probably a little bit better bet than Trey Lance, only because I think Fields has a better shot to start.
Way better.
Way better.
Way better.
But I think Lance is also in the conversation for somebody who can blow his ADP out of the water. But John, we were talking earlier, Scott's going to have a couple of articles this week about the running quarterbacks and the Konami code and all that stuff. The market's adjusted. Jalen Hurts is a top 10 pick at quarterback. You're not getting the discount on Josh Allen the way you did last year and Lamar Jackson the way you did 2 years ago. But the guys who you will get discounts on are the guys who aren't guaranteed to start right now. Justin Fields, Trey Lance. And, I'm kind of with Greg at this point. I just have this like, at the beginning of August, they're going to be like, well, Andy's still a starter. And then it's going to be the preseason and Justin Fields is going to look great in the second preseason game. And then all of a sudden they announce that Fields is going to start week one and they have that Sunday night football game against the Rams. And it's going to be highly anticipated. I wouldn't be shocked if Fields starts week one at this point. And, it would at least make the Bears kind of appointment television. But the thing for fantasy is, and we talked about this with Jalen Hurts, you don't even necessarily need to play well in order to produce for fantasy if you're running around. And Justin Fields clearly has that ability.
I think Fields will play better than Hurts, obviously, in the first 3, 4, 5 games of the career. Probably not that hard to do. Greg, back to you. And Anthony Miller has been like in Chateau Bow-Wow. So who knows? But he may not even be around for much longer.
John, you could just add, you could expect him if he's on the roster. He won't be a factor. He's not draftable for fantasy. I'll leave it at that.
I think Daz Newsome is, dare I say, the favorite if Miller's not around.
I really like
Daz Newsome.
Yeah, I really like his college tape, Newsome. And he's a pure slot. He's really good at it too.
Right. What type of slot is he? Is he a quick twitch guy? Is he a volume guy? What do you like about him?
He could be a volume guy, but he showed some vertical ability. He ran slot fades. He got on top of corners. Right. He also showed some quickness with the kind of routes we associate with the slot, the juke routes, the pivot routes, the whip routes. I think he's a really good slot receiver.
Adam, back to you, do we trust Cole Kmet as a young, ascending, maybe a breakout type?
Well,
Jimmy Graham's
really
still
high
on the
on
roster.
He's everything they thought he would be. He's gotten better as a blocker. They thought as the season went along. Jimmy Graham is limited to what you could ask him to do.
Yeah. Is Komet blocking too much though? Is he too good?
No, I mean he ran pass routes. The thing is, Graham, inside the 10 is getting the football. He's a basketball player playing football. That's the way that they look at them at him. Overall, Komet, I don't know that he's good. He'll never be a high volume guy for targets. It's not the way that they see it. As long as Allen Robinson's on the team, Allen Robinson's going to lead them in targets. Obviously it's not going to change.
Graham, do you think that Allen Robinson's quarterback situation this year with Dalton and Fields and Foles, how much better is it in your mind than last year when we had Trubisky and Foles? And he caught 100 balls, by the way.
Yeah, it's not saying much, but this is the best, by far the best quarterback room A-Rob's ever played with. And I go back to that 2015 year. Was it 2015? Yeah, the A-Rob broke out, or maybe it was 2016, where Bortles was like serviceable, and he actually threw downfield a ton. Bortles threw downfield a ton. And I know you mentioned earlier that having Fields and just at least having a vertical element to this offense will be huge. And it'll be huge for A-Rob's ceiling, because he was more of I don't want to say he was a compiler last year, but he was more of a product of volume. And I think A-Rob probably has a bigger ceiling this year with Fields, not only on deep, the deep shots, but Fields, Fields' legs, man, he's going to be able to extend drives like the Bears didn't have last year. And that'll lead to more opportunities as a whole for A-Rob and this whole offense.
And I think they're, based on what I've heard, they're going to give Robinson an opportunity to move around a little bit more than they normally won't be as static.
Nice.
So not that he ever was, but I do believe they'll move him around more. Look, they're going to have some offensive line changes, by the way. Daniels may be their center. I know that they're talking internally about the best position for Daniels. Daniels sometimes does not win inside and gets pushed, or you see him on the ground.
So they'll move Whitehair to guard?
Yeah, because he's played both. He's played guard before. So that they, believe it or not, they're very happy with Jermaine Arfetti, who was a first-round bust for the Seahawks. That's why he's back. They were pretty happy with him. So but before we move on to Detroit, Greg, my question to you is: Did you see Tevin Jenkins' tape? The second rounder?
Yeah.
What do you think?
He's a mauler. He's a competitive guy. He's they have him listed at left tackle, which is very interesting. I know he played that in college, but he's more. But again, the game's changed. So, you don't have to be a great athlete to play tackle anymore, but he's kind of a tempo setter for an O-line. He's tough. He's competitive. He's physical. He's nasty. He plays with an edge. He's a good player.
Bears had a good draft, Greg. Once the Fields pick was in, and then they got Jenkins, I was like, wow, this is already I'm sold.
They also drafted an O-lineman in the 5th round from Missouri named Larry Borum, who I've studied as well. He's a big dude, but really athletic. He's an interesting guy to watch because right tackle is kind of an open position for them.
Bear defense, they lose Kyle Fuller. They may miss him. We'll see if Desmond Trufant.
They like this kid. One of the strangest names I've ever seen in my life. Kindle Vildor was a 5th rounder last year. They love him. He's one of they think he's, other than Jalen Johnson, their best returning corner. Remember, Artie Burns was hurt last season.
Wow.
Desmond Trufant has not been a factor in years. I don't understand what Chicago was thinking signing him. That was the one move where I go, the guys have been healthy in years. Detroit learned that the hard way. But I'm telling you, this Vildor kid, keep it if you're a Bears fan watching.
Wow. Kindle Vildor sounds like a Batman villain.
Exactly, like a character. Right, exactly. I never heard of the guy until last year, but anyway.
All right.
Their defense, so they're very happy with the Sean Desai, who's a Vic Fangio disciple. Their defense is going to change a little bit. It's going to be more of the Vic Fangio defense than Pagano. Yeah,
Pagano wrapped it up there. I guess, looks like he's going to retire. The Detroit Lions, oh boy, looks like we got to deal with this. Dan Campbell taking over Anthony Lynn. Adam and I did talk to Dave Burkett of the Detroit Free Press, who did clarify to us on Friday, still expect DeAndre Swift, to be the lead back basically. But, I think we need to open up, more touches for Jamal Williams, Adam. I mean, clearly they're going to use Jamal Williams maybe a little bit more than we thought. And I like Jamal Williams all season.
Look, they felt that they can move Kerryon Johnson. They won't move him. They cut him. He's had this knee issue, but Jamal Williams is coming off a good season. He handles pass pro. He could be a 3rd down back. It's too early to know the touch total. I don't know yet. We're in May, but DeAndre Swift is a dynamic player. But we know what the offense is going to be. It's going to be a grinded out, very little imagination. you look at the receiver core, they're already telling you what it looks like. It's a run-based offense. I mean, they drafted Sewell. He's going to play right tackle for them. They have potentially one of the best offensive lines they've had in years. I believe Vitai's going to move to guard, probably be the right guard, or at least compete for it. Their team, John.
Let me ask you guys this, just as a philosophy question.
Yes.
Would you draft a guy in the top 10 to change positions?
It's a great question because everyone likes Sewell as a left tackle.
Because I've had this conversation with, coaches and people.
I was there when you did it.
Correct. And
I'll do it on the offensive line, Greg.
Most people don't think you should draft a guy in the top 10 to change positions.
Right.
But then,
and I wonder how, by the way, Sewell, some teams saw him as a guard, believe it or not. One general manager said, short arms, he's not a left tackle for us. He goes, we just have a cutoff point for left tackle. He goes, we play him at right tackle or guard. Now, how will he play there? We'll see.
Right.
I think back to the what was the Andre Dillard comment when the Eagles had him play right tackle?
Oh, he was a disaster.
It was a disaster there. He said it's like wiping your butt with the wrong hand.
Ooh, did he say that?
Somebody said that. It might have been.
I don't
Andre
even want to think
Dillard.
about it. Yeah,
it might have been Andre Dillard who said that. But like Greg, you've made the comment many times that like you don't see much of a difference anymore between a left tackle and a right tackle. Like,
well, no, not in terms. What I meant by that was
for a guy to switch sides.
Right. Not in terms of the value of the position is what I'm saying. Not in terms of the mechanics of being taught the position, which I can't speak to at a high level because I'm not an offensive line guru. But in terms of the way the NFL game is now played, right. I don't think there's a meaningful delineation at all between right tackle and left tackle.
Which would explain, like, when Jason Peters has had all the injuries over the years, the Eagles just didn't put Lane Johnson at left tackle. Because, you have an elite right tackle, why would you move him?
Right.
But some guys, but what you're saying is some guys can switch sides left to right tackle like that. Other guys have big-time problems making that transition.
Yeah, it's a whole different situation from what I've been told. But I'm just was making sort of an conversation I'm speaking about. But you're drafting a guy, and granted, I guarantee when they got, I believe it was the 8th pick. Was he the 8th player chosen?
He was 7th.
Seventh.
Yeah.
I guarantee that when they got to 7 and he was still on the board, they just said we're taking Sewell because they probably had him rated as a top 3 or 4 guy on their board, and that's fine. I'm not knocking the pick. I'm just saying that you drafted the guy now to change positions, and that becomes, I don't want to say question maybe is too strong, but it's definitely something you've got to work on.
Probably tips us off though on, their identity and what they want to do under the dude, Dan Campbell.
We know what's coming, man.
O-line coach and tight end. And, Adam and I, boy, we just go on and on and on about DeAndre Swift on Sirius XM. We're just so impressed with the kid. I felt like he did everything he possibly could have done, but were there any areas that you noticed that, oh, okay, this is something where he might be able to improve upon? I loved him. I thought he made unblocked defenders miss. I thought he played with, pretty good power and some juice. Your thoughts though on what you saw to DeAndre Swift?
Who are you talking to, me?
Yeah, Greg.
Oh, DeAndre Swift to me didn't necessarily play enough. I mean, I think his talent level is really good. The question you have to decide on DeAndre Swift, John, and this is a question for you, is if they want to run the ball, is he a 280 carry back? I mean, That's the question you have to decide. I think that's an open question right now. I don't think there's a defined answer to that, because, he didn't, even though he came in at the combine at like 213, I don't know if he's that guy. He might be.
He's probably going to be a 200 carry a year guy,
which is fine. I mean, to me, he fits more, and he's not quite this player, but he fits more in the Alvin Kamara mold to me. Even though Kamara is a better receiver, he's the best receiver. So, and Swift's pretty good receiver, but he fits more to me as that guy than as a sort of workhorse back.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I've got him at 220 carries,
which I think would be okay, but I don't think you can start getting to 270, 280.
Yeah.
Graham, do you see him as that guy?
Yeah, no, I don't. And that's what I was gonna say is like I think we have to believe Anthony Lynn when he says that he wants to get Jamal Williams the ball. Like Anthony Lynn was
Yeah.
giving Josh Kelly the ball, Kalen Balaj the ball. And I get Austin Eckler was hurt last year, and you know, you can't necessarily make Austin Eckler a foundation piece where you give him 80 to 22 carries, but I don't see Swift in that capacity at all. And I think we need to make some adjustments on Swift. You know, I don't
mean,
think.
look, maybe in an ideal, where did Campbell come from? The Saints?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
All right.
He's the tight end coach.
Okay, so maybe we got the Kamara Latavius Murray situation here. You got Swift being, 175 to 200. You got Jamal Williams carrying, 120, whatever that number is. I don't know what Murray's exact number was a year ago. John, you would know that better than I. But I mean, maybe that's the kind of scenario they see playing out.
Yeah, and Greg, to that point, the biggest problem for at least for our game for fantasy is the Lions are not going to be as nearly productive as the Saints. No.
And the other thing is too
yeah.
is their defense has some significant questions.
It's terrible.
Yeah. I guess that remains to be seen, but because clearly in their mind they've got some players who they feel will continue to improve. I'm not going to sit here and say it's great, believe me. And they've got a first-year DC in Aaron Glenn. That becomes an issue too, because if they get behind, they're in an interesting situation because they have a quarterback who, in my view, and Jared Goff's been taking a lot of grief over this, particularly with the trade and the whole deal. And is he great? No, but Jared Goff's not a stiff either. But you probably don't want to be in a situation where he has to drop back as a drop back passer as many times as he might have to, given the team that he's on.
Yeah, no doubt. By the way, real quick, they ran it 23 times a game last year. We're moving on to a 17th game. So you're looking at probably about 400 carries. So do we believe that Jamal Williams is going to get upwards to 200? Because they don't really have much else. So, I mean, do they split the carries right down the middle between Swift and Jamal Williams? They do have Jamar Jefferson too, Greg, who you noticed was a volume type of runner.
He was a big time volume back in college, but
yeah.
He's a 7th round pick. Swift was a 2nd round pick, and Williams is signed.
Who'd you have on the show last week? It was Dave Burkett.
Yeah.
He pointed out that of all the free agents the Lions signed this offseason, the only one they gave a multi-year contract to was Jamal Williams.
Yeah,
that's true.
Williams is going to get carries. Now, whether he gets 200 or 130, John, have fun with that one. I can't help you with that.
Yeah. I've got him at 130 right now, Greg, actually. I actually literally have him at 130.
But I mean, they didn't sign Jamal Williams to carry 4 times a game. This is going to be Swift. This is going to be, I'm convinced, more of a Kamara Murray thing where Swift gets 170 and, Williams gets, that 130, whatever that number you have.
I want to talk to Greg about Goff really quick because Greg, I know you've studied Goff a ton, obviously.
A ton. Oh yeah.
His problems, I think, if I were to say like the things that cause Jared Goff problems, though, I think I would rank pressure maybe number 1 and number 2.
Yeah.
But when I look at the Lions team, I think you can make the argument the strongest unit on the roster is the offensive line, which could help Jared Goff.
Well, Goff with the Rams, and I think McVay used him properly. Goff with the Rams was essentially an under center. They more shotgun over the last year or so, but predominantly an under center quarterback, play action, boot action. That's what he is. He's a rhythm player. He throws the ball really well. Goff starts to get into trouble. Number 1 versus pressure. Most quarterbacks do, but Goff particularly. And if you have to make him move, he's not a second reaction player. So quarterbacks like that, if they get into too many games where they've got to drop back 40 times plus, you start getting pressure. And but again, their defense becomes a big issue here. Becomes a very big issue.
Yeah. Run the ball as much as you can, obviously, for a variety of reasons. Protect Goff, protect the defense, stay ahead of the down. Greg, I actually have Amon-Ra St. Brown leading their wide receivers in catches. It's in part because Perriman and Tyrell have all kinds of durability and availability issues.
Just to sum this up so we can move on. This is a run offense. They're not going to be throwing the ball very much. Trust me on that. You can take that to the bank.
Right.
That's
This is-
fine. That's fine if their defense can hold up.
Well, that
That's
goes
fine.
with any team that has a bad defense, but their philosophy is they want to run on first, run on second. This is not going to be an analytical team. They're telling you by personnel what they want to be. This is Anthony Lynn, my buddy who coached with him, loves Anthony as a guy. He's a run guy. He's a run game guy. This is why he's.
I
That's
mean,
why Dan
Adam,
Kim-
to your
One
point.
other point I'd make, because Perriman and Williams, we have no idea what their situation is due to injury. I mean,
Yeah.
they could be playing or they could not be playing. I think you might want to consider, and maybe you have already, Quintus Cephas, who's a very interesting player.
Mhm.
He had some good moments a year ago. I watched him at Wisconsin. He ran a poor 40, but he plays faster than that. He's not a burner, but he ran a 4.72, something like that, which, by the way, was the same 40 that Anquan Bolden ran. But Quintus Cephas is a very interesting player, and it wouldn't surprise me if Cephas and St. Brown end up being their main receivers.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm waiting on that one, Adam.
Hawkinson, John.
What's that?
Well, I mean, I'm talking about wideout.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
know
yeah.
out wide, but like, what are the odds, Adam, that Hawkinson doesn't lead this team in targets?
I mean,
Oh,
they're
forget it.
so bad at receiver, Joe. I mean,
Hmm.
Hawkinson has to. I couldn't tell you how many catches he's going to have. I'm glad I don't do
Hey,
projections.
John,
I could tell you.
I'll be right
75.
back. You guys keep talking. I'll be right back.
Okay, I could
I
tell
mean,
you, Adam. 75.
Yeah, it was funny. I think 80 is very possible, but
Right.
it's just this is a run-oriented offense. Now, what I'd also heard is they may try to spread it out a little bit. Do a little bit of it's still gonna be a power run team. That don't mistake me, but you could still be a power run team and spread things out. It's just we can move on here. We know what this offense is going to be. There'll
Well,
be
again,
there's
real
no
quick,
mystery here, folks.
To your point, I mean, I said what I said about Amon-Ra St. Brown. I got to do with 49 catches. So, I mean,
Wow.
that's what I
Right.
have leading the team in wide receiver. Now,
Okay.
Cephas, I have kind of put to the side for a moment because I just didn't get a buzz
He's
about him at
really
all.
smart. As I told you last summer, the
Yeah.
Lions felt that he would be their top backup, and he actually started some because of injury. Super
Right.
smart kid. He had an off the field accusation which forced him down boards. That's why I went to the 5th round. He's a
Right.
very gifted kid, super duper smart, very super high football IQ, one of the smartest rookie receivers last season. He was pressed into a role before he was ready. But Greg's right. He's a kid who's got some gifts. Some
We'll
Yeah,
keep
this-
an eye on him. We'll
Yeah, see.
certainly add him if he's moving up in the world. And Green Bay, I mean, we probably don't need to spend a ton of time here because we'll waste time on May 25th talking about whether or not Aaron Rodgers will or will not be there. I certainly believe he will be there. That means nothing. So let's talk about the backfield here first, Greg or Adam. Aaron Jones, again, I don't think the number of carries really changes much from where we've been with Aaron Jones. They are pretty smart about it. So I think he's right there, another 200, 220 carries, but a lot of catches with Jamal Williams gone because A.J. Dillon, I did talk with him about this and he did say, hey, I'm a pretty
I
good
got a little
receiver.
tip for you. Now, I don't, this is super early and I don't know. First, he's got to make the team, but Patrick Taylor, who played at Memphis,
Right. He's been there.
Yeah, he was an undrafted free agent last year. I need to find it. He may actually see a little, if he makes the team, he's got good size. He may factor in a little bit.
Well, if he went to Memphis, he must be a good receiver.
Well, that's what I was getting to. So let's just see what happens. We're too early here. We're in May. I mean, for goodness sake, we don't know a lot. I would think the touch total will be 65-35 Dillon, obviously 65 Jones, 35 Dillon, maybe 60-40 in that range, but they have a plan, and Dillon is a perfect complement to Jones's explosiveness. This is going to be fun backfield. It might be maddening at times for fantasy.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about it, but it's Dillon in that one extended game. I love to get Greg's thoughts on the tape.
Yeah.
That one game where he got a lot of work.
Oh, well, Dillon is just, there's no mystery about Dillon.
Yeah.
I mean,
How did
Dillon's
that
got
tape
real,
look? Do you remember that game where he had a lot
yeah,
of carries?
it was, I believe, in the snow against Tennessee.
Okay.
Was it not?
It
Yeah,
sounds
it
right.
was.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
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 Sounds right.
Oh,
Okay.
no, Dillon's an interesting back because he's actually got pretty light feet.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, he's got lighter feet than Derrick Henry.
Yep.
He's nowhere near as explosive as Derrick Henry. That's what makes Henry. Henry's a strider and he can run. Dillon's not that guy. but Dylan's got lighter feet and can find space.
But there is some Derrick Henry to the game, right? In terms of like the physicality and, you know.
What do you think, Graham? I don't think I think their weight's the same, but I don't think they're really similar runners. Do you?
Yeah. No, I don't either. And one of the big things that Henry has improved on coming, the last couple of years, when the reason he's become Derrick Henry, as you mentioned, the explosiveness.
Yeah.
He wasn't necessarily like a build-up speed guy like Leonard Fournette was coming out, but it definitely took him a couple steps. He has gotten so much more explosive within his first couple of steps. And Dylan doesn't necessarily have that short area burst, nor does he have the long speed. I think Dylan's just a big back, man.
Yeah, to me, Henry's power comes from build-up, not just from the fact that he just runs into the line and moves people.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the way Henry runs. I think Dylan is a little more like that.
Okay.
That's actually why I struggled with Henry when he was coming out of college, Greg.
Which for most people did, including myself.
Yeah, I did too.
So, John, just as the funny aside, you love names. Do you know AJ Dillon's name?
I think I did at one point and I was intrigued by it. What is it?
Algiers Jameel Dillon.
Oh, wow.
Wow. You're going to drop an Algiers on the show.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt.
Anyway.
Yeah,
people watching are going to get the full experience because I had to run down and get lunch or I would have missed lunch. So I'm going to be eating now while we talk.
That's all right. Greg's his blood sugar's down. He's got.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna pass out if I had to listen to Caplan anymore.
I get that way too, and I'm really.
Yeah, I know.
I'll tell you what. I always say about Greg, he's not funny, but that was actually pretty good.
Graham, here's the thing with AJ Dillon, real quick. I really like him. But when you plug in the numbers, he just doesn't come out high. I got him with 12 grabs, and there's just no getting around that.
Yeah, and I mean, Rodgers is obviously the biggest puzzle piece we're waiting on. But yeah, I think you nailed it. I don't think Aaron Jones's carry total is going to change that much, but Jamal Williams sneakishly played a lot of passing snaps last year.
Oh yeah. We've got Aaron Jones with 60 catches.
Yeah, I think Aaron Jones is going to catch a ton of balls this year because Dylan's just a complete zero there.
Now, if we don't get anything else going on at wide receiver, Greg, let me start with you. Your thoughts on if Amari Rodgers is utilized, what are we looking at here? Not necessarily a Randall Cobb type, but I mean, I do like having a quick twitch kind of a guy here, little jitterbug type of guy compared to these other
but he's
bigger
also
receivers.
Really strong. He's 211 pounds. He's got a powerful lower body. You can line him up both inside, outside. He's got a vertical dimension. He's a more vertical dimension than Randall Cobb. This kid can run a little bit.
Yeah.
I think he's a pretty complete receiver. I liked his tape a lot. So, I mean, I don't know what you guys were talking about when I stepped away for a sec, but I mean, who knows? Are we talking as if Rodgers is the quarterback or not?
Well, we're not going to spend a ton of time on it because we don't know, but I would lean toward yes for now.
No idea. When we're in May,
we're in May.
We'll know by August. If he does not report to training camp, they're gonna have to make a decision.
I mean, what kind of bomb would that be? Let's say he gets traded to Denver. Like,
that's the only
pretty
place
big bomb there.
What's that?
That'd be a pretty big bomb in terms of NFL bombs that come, on a Friday afternoon that shock us.
Yeah, well, it won't be a secret because if he doesn't report to if the agent tells him, David Dunn, listen, Aaron's not reporting to training camp, they have a decision to make. Because if the fines of the new CBA are unbelievably significant, into the millions if he misses all training camp. And you can't rescind them by CBA. So if he's willing to miss training camp, that means he's not coming in. That you got to look at it that way. So that changes everything. So that's what that is. And obviously,
I've interviewed a lot of players in my career, and I've never met Aaron Rodgers. But my sense of Aaron Rodgers is that he's not coming in.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he's very stubborn, John. His history with his family and other things. He holds grudges, and his issue with the general manager is not a secret. Everybody knows it. If you cover the NFL, it's not a secret.
I have really struggled projecting the receivers outside of Devontae Adams and Bobby Tonyan.
I would expect. Let's get back to. I expect Lazard to start if the season started today. I'm not saying Rodgers can't be a factor. I don't know enough about him yet, but I know the way they felt about Lazard before he had the groin injury, before he had the groin surgery. They were blown away by how good he was. and then he was never the same when he came back. And MVS is, so inconsistent. So,
Greg, do you think there's a chance at some point that Amari Rogers moves up in the pecking order and, is really, let's say, the wide receiver 3 behind Adams, someone else, and then Amari Rogers?
Yes, without question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Without question.
Greg, do you think Amari Rogers is strictly slot?
No.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I mean, they move those guys around.
I think those delineations, Graham, are over for the most part. Now, are there certain guys like Cole Beasley? There's always going to be a few, but I think, the Tonys, the Rogers, the Eskridge, these guys are not just going to be slot receivers in the NFL.
Okay.
Anybody else have any other questions here on Green Bay?
Well, I think we have to talk to Greg about Jordan Love. I mean, we have no sample on Jordan Love last year, so let's just get a tape evaluation. Greg, essentially, if Jordan Love plays this year, he's essentially a rookie. He's going to have the development year. He wasn't even active for a game. I know you don't do lists, but comparing and contrasting Jordan Love to some of the quarterbacks who came out this year, what are his strengths? What are his weaknesses? Like, would he have been considered a first-round prospect this season?
I'm going back to my report on Jordan Love.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got Minnesota to get to in the next 5 minutes, and
that's fine.
Then we're going to wrap up part number 1 here of the 2020 live stream virtual powwow at fantasypoints.com. Greg, you got
here's what I said about Love. I said he'll be a fascinating evaluation given his desirable skill set. His size, arm strength, movement profile clearly suggests first-round talent and higher-level NFL quarterbacking, but its inconsistent lower body mechanics and lack of consistent ball placement are concerns as he transitions to the league. Love has much work to do with his combination of traits and attributes, including a good sense of timing in the quick game, and has much to work with, and a willingness to turn it loose and make tough throws. I said he was as intriguing a quarterback prospect as there is in the draft. This would be in any draft. He's a higher level arm talent who can throw with velocity and touch and has more than enough mobility. First round traits will likely be in the eye of the beholder. So he has a lot of talent. Again, I don't know the mental part. I don't know those things. I'm not around the kid, but he's got a lot of talent.
Moving on to the Minnesota Vikings here, Adam. I know you have to run. We've all got to run here. Not much going on, honestly. There's not real strong position battles.
Yeah,
Irv
the
Smith,
O-line.
Are we ready for Irv Smith? The era of Irv.
Well, 2 things. The O-line, you're going to obviously Darrisaw will be their left tackle. Wyatt Davis will start at left guard. Forget Dakota Dozier. That's not going to happen. Wyatt Davis, they are very high on that. They feel, in fact, I cannot believe they traded back and got Darrisaw. I know the Colts wanted to go with Kwity Paye, and that's fine.
They're going to have all number 1 or number 2 picks on the line for what it's worth.
It's good. The Ezra Cleveland will I'm sure will improve, and Brian O'Neill's been a great story. We're pretty happy with him. He's not a great player, but he's a good player. Now, Irv Smith, John, you and I have talked about this. They don't have a lot of pass targets. It's Jefferson, obviously, and Thielen. There's no reason to think he can't get 50 plus catches. It's just he's just got to be more consistent. Now, he was also hurt last year.
We know it's coming. It's very simple. The O-line, they've continually addressed it. That's 2 number 1 picks, a bunch of number 2 picks. It's a good run blocking line. Dalvin Cook is one of the best backs in football. He's getting the ball. He's going to kick ass. They're going to do the play action, move the pocket. Kirky now gets a left tackle. And if they're reinforced up front and Kirky has more
and legit,
time.
By the way, Riley Reef talking to teams who are looking to sign him. They were going to do what the Bengals did. They thought he was way better right tackle, but as a tackle below average. Just think about that. He'd been below average for years and they got away with it. This kid's a legit left tackle. We could say whatever we want about Darrisaw.
I love Darrisaw State.
Right. But the fact of the matter is they have a legit, for the first time, really, and I don't know how long, I have to look up their depth chart of the last 15 years. This kid's a legit left tackle, and they've needed one.
Oh, yeah. It's the first time they've had that since, man.
That's why I'm asking. I know. I don't know.
Adam?
I'm trying to think. But anyway, Greg.
Well, hold on one sec. Adam, I'll let you go here with this.
Yeah.
Have you spoke to them about Kellen Mond? I mean, what's their view of?
Yeah,
Cousins
they look
versus
at
Mond?
him. We'll go by contract structure. Cousins has to be the starter through 22. There's nothing they can do about it because of their last restructure with him.
Because they drafted Nate Stanley in the 4th round last year.
Yeah, seventh round, Stanley.
Seventh?
Yes.
You sure?
Oh, I know, because his agent texted me. Who you know, Jolenta. He texted me.
Oh,
Hey,
seventh
I got
round,
another
that's
guy.
correct. Yes, 7th.
Yeah, you got another guy drafted.
My bad. Yeah.
Yeah, Mond is they see him like all teams do, as a really nice upside developmental guy for down the road. He's got issues with mechanics that have to be corrected.
It's like a flyer pick in fantasy. Like,
Yeah,
hey, we'll
it's
take a shot here.
Look, he's what, by year 3, by 23, who's to say he can't be competing for the starting job? But
So Cousins by contract will be the start of the
it
next.
has
2
to
years?
be. Yeah, this last restructure. I mean, I give his agent Mike McCartney credit. My gosh, talk about leverage. He took a restructure, and they did an advance guarantee on his contract. His base salary in 22 is fully guaranteed, so he will be the starter for this year and next year.
So quick point, John. I know you were going to ask me, but I think a player to watch here is Smith Marset. I think he could easily become the 3rd receiver. He can run. He can get on the top of people. I think there's so much there to develop with this kid for what he is. He's not going to become a volume guy, but Iowa is an old school college offense out of the 90s where they put the quarterback under center. They run the ball. They don't toss it around. So his numbers are not great, but Smith Marset can run.
Yeah, and they've been taking their shots with these, middle to later round picks.
Yeah.
BC Johnson and
he's better than, in my view, anyway. I'm just giving you my view of tape study. I think he's better than those guys.
Mr. Caplan had to take off, but I mean, again, there's not much to get to, Greg. I mean, can you find an easier offense to break down and handicap like everything I just laid out? They're going to.
No, we know what they're going to do. We know what they're going to do, and they've done the right thing with the O-line. They've built it up, so they're going to run the ball. They're going to go play action. Hopefully their defense, gets better. It wasn't great last year. They had a lot of young players in the secondary.
Oh yeah.
So they signed Patrick Peterson now to be one corner. He's not the same guy, but we know Peterson, still he's a veteran. Guys will look up to him. They signed Xavier Woods, who's not a bad player either, to play safety. Once they lost to Anthony Harris to the Eagles, so they're hoping that and Danielle Hunter's back, right?
Yeah, Danielle Hunter's back. Anthony Barr is back.
Right.
Good depth at corner. I mean, Pierce they get.
Didn't Pierce sit out this year?
Pierce sat out last year. He's back.
Yeah, he sat out because of COVID.
Yes.
And he's a very good run stuffer. He's along the lines of a Linville Joseph.
The defense is going to be good again. Probably not 2017, 2018 good, but they're going to be good.
So we know what they are. There's no mystery about what the Vikings are on offense.
No, there really isn't. So if anybody else doesn't have anything else, I think we could probably wrap it up here. Jefferson Thielen going to get the ball per usual, and you love it. And Irv Smith as well. But guys, anything else here on Minnesota?
I just got to say, it's incredible that Adam Thielen is a 4th round pick this year. I mean, that is just like a huge, huge fact. He's going in the 5th round in some drafts, John. I mean, that's just insane, right?
It is insane because when you never had great speed to begin with, there's nothing to lose.
That's a good point. And I mean, we're looking for touchdowns, and Thielen's going to score touchdowns. I mean, I know we love Justin Jefferson, but Thielen was their guy in the red zone and getting the end zone targets. I love Thielen as a target.
I do too. I just drafted him actually. And but Greg, when the Vikings face teams that are going to travel their corner, and they're traveling against Justin Jefferson, right? I mean, 9 times out of 10.
Boy, that's a great question. I'm trying to remember. I remember you asked me that one, and it was Thielen that they covered. I mean, it's a tough call. I mean,
it is.
It's a tough call. I mean, Jefferson put up the bigger numbers and obviously had a phenomenal rookie year, and no question. But Thielen, my sense is, and I haven't talked to people about this, but my sense is he's a really highly respected receiver.
Yeah. Route running, hands, chemistry with Kirky is really good.
Yeah.
Red zone. And Kirk Cousins is throwing another 30 this year if he plays.
Well, Cousins is one of those guys, John. He does the same thing every year. For fantasy, he's very good. Obviously, people don't think he's a quote-unquote Super Bowl quarterback, whatever that means. But, because he hasn't been and he hasn't, necessarily performed well in the playoffs. But in the regular season, you guys know he puts up numbers. He does the same thing every year.
And we do the same thing every year by running longer than expected. But
Yeah.
you know, I don't know what to say. I
Well,
over deliver. That's
give
my
them-
thing. I
John,
over
the
John,
people
deliver.
what they
the
want,
first
John.
team we do is guaranteed. John will do 25 minutes on the first team we do.
I know. Well, you guys keep talking. Why don't you tell me to shut up and move on? But yeah, I think you do that every once in a while. So we'll wrap it up here. And we thank you, Greg, for your time. We're sorry to interrupt your lunch break there. I know you got to get
No,
back.
I just had to get it or I missed lunch, John, and I can't miss lunch, you know?
No, I know. I've been
Yeah.
there. I've been there. It's a just damn fine cafeteria you got there too, by the way. But I'll go downstairs to my cafeteria, aka a refrigerator.
Right.
Joe Dolan, Graham Barfield, our guy Adam Caplan had to run. A special shout out to our guy Ben Kukanis behind the glass. We'll be back tomorrow morning, starting at 10:45, and we will be done. Mark my words, by 12:30 tomorrow. Early bird miss 21 if you missed out on the early bird special for your fantasypoints.com subscription here in 2021. Early bird miss 21 for 10% off. For Adam Caplan, Greg Cosell, Graham Barfield, and Joe Dolan, and Ben Kukanis behind the glass, I am John Hansen. We'll catch you tomorrow for part 2 of the 2021 fantasypoints.com virtual powwow live stream.